Okay, well, my name is Linda Smith. I serve as pastor and spiritual care provider for Mary's Place since about 2008 is when I first started with in an official title. But prior to that time, around 2000, I started to take resources and supplies to the women's shelter, which was then in the United First Methodist Church in downtown Seattle in the basement. And that's when I first became aware of Mary's Place and how I got involved. But little did I know at that time I would become the pastor and spiritual care provider over the years. So that's a little bit about how I got involved and my background. So. Mhm.
Do you have a favorite memory of Mary's Place? Is there an interaction or an experience that really stands out to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as I started to think about that question, there are so many moments and so many experiences, but the one that I think that has really had a profound impact on my life and the community was when Marty called us together one day. We were down on Vale Street, and said, we're running out of funds. So many families were needing to be, um, put up in hotels and motels and just didn't have the funds to do it. So um, at that point, we were still, Church Mary Magdalene and Mary's Place had not joined as one. So she said, well, you're the pastor. Can you maybe reach out to the churches? So what we did was we got the telephone directory and we started calling the churches. And the idea was if they would just put a family up for 1 week in what we call the rotating shelter. And that's sort of like really caught a wildfire as the words that I would use. Um, and it really impacted homelessness here in the city of Seattle, and it sort of caught on fire because other places within a couple of years started doing the rotating shelter. But I think that was really a very profound moment for me because there were so many families experiencing homelessness, although Church of Mary Magdalene had really been centered around women, women who were um, experiencing homelessness and other issues that impacted their lives. So I think that was one that's really that sort of etched it in my heart.
Hmm. What impact did you see Mary's Place having in the greater Seattle community?
Well, it changed the lives of those experiencing homelessness immediately because families, particularly women with children, is what it initially started off as. Then it started to just take in families, no matter what the mix was. But it had an immediate impact on the community. It gave those individuals who were experiencing homelessness a sense of dignity and restoring their self-worth, because homelessness, those who were experiencing homelessness, um, were viewed as somebody who had did something wrong or they hadn't handled their resources. So people felt outcast. So I think the impact that it did, it really made the region just started to look at homelessness differently. Because at the time, Mary's Place started to put families up, families with boys. Over 12 could not stay with them. So a mother who was, or a father who was, particularly mothers at that point, who had kids and their sons was over 12, they'd have to try and find someplace else for their sons over 12 to live. So it really sort of changed the whole dynamic of what providing resources and services to families experiencing homelessness look like. I think it removed that stigma of shame that those who are or experiencing any kind of social ill or,
Mhm.
or affliction. It changed that. And then I think the other thing that it did was it sort of created a what I call a buzz in the area because uh, so many people wanted to get involved, and I saw corporate organizations that wanted to, like, okay, this is how we can help in the area. So that was not, you didn't have that sense before, because it was almost like corporate was separated from the issues of the community. And so I think Mary's Place really was that shining star. I remember some of the people that were sitting around the table initially when the formation of the board and stuff started, and they were people from corporate America, uh, agencies and organizations who had financial resources that really want to say we can help.
Mhm.
And so I think that really changed the impact. I think the spirit of Mary's Place generated a spirit across the region that everyone took a different look at the issue around homelessness and how do we support families with children, um, so that they're not sleeping outside, and being able to help them to uh, find stability within their, find stability and be able to move to more long-term housing or uh, shelter that took them off of the streets, out of their cars, um, during a really critical time of their lives.
Mhm. And how, during your involvement with Mary's Place, have you seen the organization itself grow and change?
Well, like I say, when I first my first encounter with Mary's Place, and even when I first started as the pastor and spiritual care provider. Well, I wasn't a spiritual care provider at that time. I was hired as a pastor, which is, providing those spiritual resources. Um, that single, it went from women to families.
Mhm.
So I think that's one of the huge changes. And Mary's Place became, as I said earlier, the guiding star for other organizations to stand back and say, hey, we can do something about this. Because, I think when I think about the community at that time, um, the community as a whole, when I say the community, I'm talking about government, I'm talking about organizations, um, didn't have a vision around what do we do in the meantime until a person who's homeless. And I think the other thing about Mary's Place, it gave people a place to come, because there really was no place for people to go. If you're homeless, you're just homeless. You try and find a relative that'll let you um, live on their couch for a few days, or you live in your car in somebody's parking lot. And so I think what Mary's Place did was it just like changed that whole, it was like a spirit that really caught on fire. I shouldn't say it was like a spirit. It was a spirit that caught on fire, that spread it throughout the community, um, and just shifted, I think, the whole perspective about how people saw others experiencing homelessness. So I think as I said, it really changed everything. And then you started to see over a period of time other cities around trying to put up resources like day centers and things like that, which really just didn't exist before, especially for families. I mean, you had sources in some places for single women and single men, but when it came to families, there really was nothing. So,
Mhm. You've spoken to this a little bit, but can you think of one event or a time period or series of events that you think are particularly important to the history of Mary's Place?
Okay, repeat that question again for me.
Can you think of like a time period maybe in the organization's history that is particularly important to that history? You've spoken to this a little bit already, but
Well, I think the time period was when, um, and I keep calling Marty's name, and I call Marty's name for a reason. I call Marty's name because Marty really was instrumental in, she was bold and courageous in, um, having the bigger vision and then taking that vision out and selling it to, um, organizations, government, um, and faith communities in terms of a collective, um, approach to this. So, and then so there's like a series of things. I think about, um, times when she would, gather us up and we would go down to City Hall, to the city council, meetings, and King County meetings. I think the things like, Women in Black, where we stand on the streets of, across from the Mirrors Hall, that when women die on the street, or anyone die on the street, um, you know, shining a light, um, on the issue of people dying on the streets who were homeless. Um, like I say, the collaboration and the collective collaboration of faith communities and organizations coming together, um, to create a pathway, out of homelessness and to long term sustainable housing. So I think there is, um, I mean, I think there are events like, the, like I think about like the fundraisers events that we used to have. And, um, I mean, those things sort of like expose and open up the bigger picture.
Mhm.
Those things are landmarks. Uh, yeah, I think there's so many different events, like I say, the, uh, working with organizations and convincing them to give space. I remember when we, went to 314 Bell Street, and I don't know what that used to be before, but I just remember that the community came in and gutted that out and, reshaped it for a day center, which ultimately, became a shelter space for people. But and then just, I think just the whole collaboration, the speaking, the going to events. So I don't think there's no one thing that I can just pinpoint. I just think about all of the
Mhm.
things that how, and she took, uh, which was the Church of Mary Magdalene, and used that energy behind that to help spread the word, like the choir go out and sing to different places. Um and that created this whole, like I say, the element that everyone was in this together, and that, together we could bring about the change and change people's lives in a way that was sustainable and long term. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm just thinking in my head, but I just did just so many different, different events. And I think, like I say, my whole, thing was, um, the most important, history around the organization. I think about 2009, 2009, 2010, 11, when, the shelters, different shelter spots were being opened up. And then it seems like that just sort of like caught on fire, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. Um, so yeah. So, um, I think the moment that really started the fire, and I use fire a lot, blazing fire. because there's power in that. Was when just starting that 1 week rotation of families through faith communities, and then the collaboration with organizations and um, actually, I think organizations actually did more were more focused and gave more resources than the government. I remember Marty was going to city council just trying to get $200,000, and it was like the biggest fight of of our lives. But and I say that not as a negative, but uh, I think it shows the power of the community, the spirit of the
Mhm.
community. I think just by galvanizing the community is what really sort of stands in my mind, not affixed to one particular point in time,
Mhm.
but you know, many things over a period of time that you could see.
Mhm. Yeah. Finally today, if you have any other memories or experiences or insights that you want to share with me to be a part of this project, I invite you to share them with me now. Um, if you have anything else you want to say about Mary's Place or about its history or about memories you want included.
No, I think just to sort of sum it up, I think the whole thing around community really developed. Um, in my experience in moments as I think about Mary's Place. Um, I can't, like I say, I can't say enough about the energy that Marty put um, into Mary's Place. Constantly out there advocating. Um, she believed in the vision, and she was always out there sharing the story of Mary's Place. Um, I think one of the things that really um, captivate me about Mary's Place is has always been focused on inclusiveness. Um, I think one of the things that what I've seen over the years is that um, Marty has really made, and I think that's this spirit that she generated throughout the organization. For me, is that no matter what level of position you were in the organization, our focus was always to serve those who needed to be served. And so never losing sight of that and always making every person um, in, important, that they were important. So when you walk into a day center or you walk into one of the family centers, um, Marty was, I call it a person who walked amongst the people. So people knew her. And so and her whole focus was to make sure that everybody that walked through our doors felt like they were loved and they were cared for. So I think just the whole idea of humanizing people. Uh, and so I think the organization has really led in a compassionate manner, which I believe is really important in terms of embracing all people, no matter what their backgrounds were, culture, their sexual background. That was not ever an issue at Mary's Place because everyone has
Mhm.
been embraced. So, um, yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking in my head, and uh, it. It makes me full because so many people have been helped. I run into people all the time, and they're saying like, "Hey, well, if it hadn't have been for Mary's Place, I'm not sure where I would be." I'm talking about people who were living in their cars, had no clothes and no food, who've now moved on to housing. Some people have purchased homes. I mean, that's like a constant, you know. When because I know lots of people here, but I know lots of people through Mary's Place, and they always remember that. So yeah, I think let me sort of share this. So I was, like I said, I was serving as pastor at Mary's Place and spiritual care provider, and about 2010, a lot of people would come, and I live in the city of Renton, and so they would come to downtown Seattle, no resources out here. And so I began to notice those resources. So I went and talked to Marty, and I said, Marty, I said, I got to do something. And so I connected with our city. Actually, I was talking to the human service person there, and she said, well, we got that old city jail um, in Renton City Hall that's not being used. So I went and I told Marty, I said, well, they have an old city jail in the city of Renton. And she says, well, I'll go with you to talk about it. And so I remember she came to what is now known as REACH, Area Ecumenical Association of Churches. And they were just meeting on issues, uh, you know, but not anything around homelessness. And so Marty came with me and we spoke to them. And out of that, that's how we came with the Center of Hope. And I don't know if you've heard of the Center of Hope. So, um, but Marty was willing to stand alongside of me, come along and help me talk to city officials, um, and that's the kind of thing that she did. So she wasn't selfish by saying, well, just Mary's Place is it. No, there's, let's
Mhm.
do this. And so that was really powerful for me. So
Mhm.
that's how the Center of Hope, the Reach Center of Hope came about because of that. And that's something that people often don't realize, is that it was really born out of Mary's Place, because
Mhm.
I saw the need, and I asked Marty to come along, and she went to a couple of meetings with me, and then that was it. The rest was history. And so yeah. So I think,
Wow.
yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing all your memories and all your experiences and answering all my questions. I've really enjoyed getting to talk to you today.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I get a little emotional, but that's because I just see the impact and the greatness of the work that Mary's Place has done in the communities, the lives that it has saved, because it really did. I mean, Mary's Place saved lives, and just I think the seeds that it has planted for the continuation through other places. So yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.